Welcome to episode 5 of the Fuzz Club. Today we're talking about Lord Buffalo's Tohu Wa Bohu. And this was a recommendation from the band that we talked about on the last episode, Psychlona. I asked them if they had any recommendations for us on what we should do in a future episode, and this is what they told us to listen to. It was definitely a little bit out of my comfort zone, but I'm glad that we dove into it. So we're gonna talk about it, and I thought it was an interesting listen. So before we get into it too much, let's do some quick intros. Brett, you wanna lead us off?
Hi, I'm Littlefoot from the band Brett. Yep, I'm the bad guy in this episode because I was not a fan.
That's a hell of a way to start.
Jadd.
Hell of a way to start. My name's Jadd. I run Blues Funeral Recordings, the label that released the record we're talking about today. So I think you can imagine I'm going to be standing on that side of the pro side of the line
Which
here.
is okay. We can be friends and disagree. It's okay.
Ryan?
I'm Ryan from Hydrogen Queen. I'm the singer in the band. I also run Lick of My Spoon Productions, and I'm friends with Lord Buffalo, but I'm also a fan.
Whoa. All right. I'm friends with Lord Buffalo also. I didn't know we were going down the whole resume here. I could
Mm-hmm.
And I'm Blake. I'm Aiwass. I'm not friends with Lord Buffalo. I'm sure they're great guys, though.
They are great guys.
So I didn't know Lord Buffalo very well before this episode. I knew of them, but I didn't know their music very well. So it was cool for me to kind of go down that rabbit hole with them and check this album out. But I did find a description that I liked today when I was doing a little bit more research about them. I don't remember if it was from their Bandcamp or what it was, but I'll read it right now. I thought it was kind of interesting. Lord Buffalo is a mud folk band from Austin, Texas, whatever that is. They make music together under cover of darkness. Their songs are bricks with which to build a house slowly. They will not be rushed. They will not be quiet. They are trees clapping, rocks crying, and the whistle in your snore. So I thought that was interesting, but oddly accurate for some reason.
The mudfolk thing always bothered me. I always felt like that almost sounded so tongue-in-cheek when I read it that it was doing them a disservice. Like people are going to think you're not taking what you do seriously, but I don't know. 3 years later, I hadn't been able to pry it loose from their they're clutching it tightly. But
they kind of have like a sound kind of like King Buffalo, which gets a lot of praise from the stoner community. But in the same breath, like they're very like indie folk. They're like a dark indie folk band or something. So like I totally understand why people kind of like overlook them in this scene specifically, but you know, the more diving into it, you get that feel of like a desert stoner, but also very much not at all. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I almost heard like Murder by Death mixed with All Them Witches.
Mm-hmm.
Those are great touchstones because I heard the Murder by Death thing when I first came across them, and I'm a Murder by Death fan from a fair bit back. So yeah, especially the older stuff.
Oh yeah, same.
So we obviously kind of went over that we had very different opinions on this album already. So let's save that for just a minute. Jadd, why don't you tell us how you got involved with Lord Buffalo and ended up putting this record out on Blues Funeral?
Sure. So I was attending the first Monolith on the Mesa Fest in 2019 in May, and I was less than a year into running the label. I mean, I was working for Magnetic Eye Records at the time, and I'd run labels before, but Blues Funeral was pretty new, and I kind of had somewhat of a plan in mind of what I was going to do, and I wasn't looking for bands because I wasn't going to run it like a traditional label. But I went to Monolith just to be there, sell some records. It's here in New Mexico where I'm located, so it was cool that they were doing a fest here, and spent some time with a couple of friends and just see some great music out in the desert. But I tried to see at least a few songs of every band that played during the couple of days that I was there. And I think I went into the indoor stage area when they were close to finishing up their set. I think they were on like their last couple of songs. And I didn't, again, I went in with no foreknowledge whatsoever. And I walked in and they were just destroying. I mean, just this cacophony of like the drums and the crazy distorted violin and that was like, I mean, I think I caught like the last 2 minutes of a particular song where they were just melting the place down. But then I think maybe if I'm remembering right, they played one more tune and it was much more in line with what you hear on the record. It was more sort of spacious and atmospheric. And I was like, who the hell is this? And the great thing about, I mean, Music Fest in general, and that fest in particular, is that the organizer, Roman, and the original organizer, Dano, they paired a lot of just brutally heavy bands with a few bands like this, where it was more, like I said, a little more sort of delicate and atmospheric, and you could kind of trip out to it a little bit. And I find that heavy music fans overall, and especially like stoner rock and doom metal fans, have room in their listening and in their hearts for this kind of stuff. I think this is why fans of this kind of music also love bands like Woven Hand, why Woven Hand is so beloved amongst fans of brutally heavy music. It's just, for some reason, it translates. And I heard them play, and I was just, I mean, you know, the phrase "my mind was blown" holds almost no meaning anymore because people use it all the time, but it really did blow my mind. And I think I sought out one of the guys just after the set. Didn't want to like take up too much, you know, be one of those, oh, you guys are great, we should do something together, because you know, how many bands have stories like that and nothing ever comes of it. But I did actually follow up with them, and it worked out to they had a record kind of done and ready to do something with. And I think that the listeners that I'm used to presenting music to, who tend to like the heavier stuff that I work with, which at the time was like Domcraft, or Lowrider or Elder, I think they'll like this. I think they will be able to accept this and get into it and release the record. And I was pleased to find that I was basically right. I mean, it was really widely kind of enjoyed, and a lot of people really dug it and got into it. And it was a nice counterpoint to so much stuff that comes out in that just pummelingly heavy vein. And so I was really pleased. We ended up, I think I did a repress that I'm actually almost out of. So it's been a consistent seller. It's been a band that once people see them, they kind of go, oh, wow, yeah, I had no idea, but it works perfectly with other heavy bands at Music Fest and on tours and so forth. So yeah, I think, I'm very, very happy with that decision. And I'm very fortunate to have come across them the way I did and had it work out with that. They were looking to do something right at the time that I was totally not looking for a band, but ended up getting involved with them anyway.
So as somebody that was blown away by their live performance and the person that literally put the record out, how do you feel that performance aspect translates to record? Because there's definitely moments in this record that I was like, oh, here we go. There's a little bit of distortion there. It's a little bit heavier. It picks up a little bit, but it was just like few and far between. How do you feel like some of that translates to record from being blown away in a live setting?
The record is more kind of meditative. Even at its most intense heavy moments, it's not heavy.
Yeah.
It's big and it kind of grabs you and sucks you in, but they get, I don't know, the term heavy is going to get real, real vague and hard to use the way I mean it, talking about this band, but yeah, they can be loud and they can play on the same fest and the same stage with traditional heavy bands effortlessly. On record, it's a little more subdued, but it still translates.
Okay.
I feel like part of that is almost kind of like how there's a lot of influence that people maybe don't realize of Velvet Underground in what, you know, stoner and doom and stuff like that, especially the droning. You know, and they weren't exactly using distortion pedals; they were just loud as fuck.
Yeah.
Right.
So how's everyone feel just generally
right
on this? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was saying that on the putting together Ripple Fest, I loved having them on Ripple Fest because there was the uniqueness and the difference of breaking up of what different kind of bands that I had there. And I was somebody who I've seen them play small venues, you know, here in Austin quite a bit, and got to know them with my band being from Austin. But when I saw them play at Psycho Las Vegas in a House of Blues, and watched people by like the third song really go, okay, this isn't heavy, but this shit makes me move. And everyone was grooving to it. I was like, man, these guys are killing it, because
They won that crowd
great
over
live
really
band.
quick.
And, it was, you could feel it in the room. Like, I remember going, I was a fan, and I was actually kind of nervous for them. I was nervous for them. They're playing, because it's not at all that year, especially. I mean, I Hate God was like 2 bands later. It was just like
Right.
heavy metal. And they really, by like the second or third song, when they played the song, it's called Halle Berry. I remember specifically them playing that, and like everyone just started moving and like grooving to it. And then people started like, it's not a mosh band, but everybody's head was moving as if it was heavy, even though it's not. It's its own brand of heavy, in my opinion. Like, it just feels heavy, but there's a fiddle player up there,
Yeah.
like it's different.
There's definitely, at least if nothing else, a kind of a darkness to it. It's not like a happy indie folk
Absolutely
feeling. It's got a darkness to it for sure. And there's plenty of songs on here that I felt like had kind of this like swagger of like some of the darker Queens of Stone Age stuff, some of the guitars, some of the swagger to it. There's definitely a Nick Cave vibe here and there. There's definitely bits that are dark
Yeah, I
and
get that.
kind of like moody and stuff like that. But there's also plenty that kept it very folky and whatnot. So what, Blake, Brett, people that maybe were not a fan originally, what were kind of your general thoughts on the album itself? What did you feel? Because I'm assuming that neither one of you really knew this band very well going into it. How did you approach it? Because for me, I didn't know the band, and on first listen, I was like, oh, this is going to be a really tough episode. I don't think this is for me. But I listened to it like, I don't know, at least 10 times. And by the end of it, I picked out a lot of stuff that I really did enjoy. And I'm glad that we kind of got stuck talking about this album because of Psychlona recommending it to us. And I enjoyed a lot of it. So,
I mean, I think it's definitely, I hope this doesn't sound like a backhanded compliment or an insult. It's a real conversation starter of an album. Because there's a lot going on. There's a lot of textures. There's a lot of feels to the album. And for me, on first listen, I was like, okay, I need this to be about 40 times heavier. That's also my inclination just with music a lot of the time. Not to say that I don't like a lot of softer stuff, but in terms of my general listening habits, I'm going for heavy. But as I listened to it more and more, it was really the textures and the different evocative sensations that it would bring about really started to grow on me. And I found myself hearing different things each time that I listened to it, especially in that first song, Raziel.
Yeah.
I
felt like that song kind of encapsulated the entire album. I mean, it kind of had it all. I had like this long atmospheric intro, but it picks up towards the middle and the end, and it kind of felt like it wraps up the album into that intro song.
Not to be all English major, but it was kind of like a thesis statement.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. You're better at saying words than me.
Well, I don't want to hijack your take, but I think it's
teacher,
really kind of a
appreciate
vibe record. Well, as a previous English major, I'm not gonna not interject over that, but no, I mean, I think it's a vibe record. It's like it's not something that you look to, or at least for me. And as the guy who put it out, I don't necessarily as often go, I want to hear this song. I don't maybe grab a song off of their record and put it on a playlist. It's more like I want to put this on in the evening if I end up like kind of working late and I don't want to just have like, the same heavy stuff I've been listening to all day on. I want to have sort of more of an eerie kind of dark vibe happening in the background. And just let it play from start to finish. I will go to this record for that more so than where I might, some of my favorite records where I'm like, oh, I just want to hear this tune, or I want this song on while I'm riding my bike and I have a particular song that I'll pull out. This is less that type of record for me.
It kind of felt like it could be like a really good movie score or something at a lot of parts. Like it felt like I wanted to see that movie. And again, I felt the same way. It's not something that I would necessarily add a song to a playlist or listen to it when I'm working out or anything, but it felt like there was so much mood there that it would be a great movie score.
Yeah, I listened to it for like 30 seconds and was like, I bet these guys moved to Austin from Portland. I was like, and there's nothing to be taken harshly from that. It's just I was like walking down the street in Portland, like seems like something I would end up hearing.
So, Brett, what do you feel like this was lacking? What do you think that they should improve upon that would get back up to your good graces?
Well, and once again, I'm not like trying to be a dick or anything, but like to me, it just didn't like. And also, I'm gonna go see him live now for sure.
Yeah,
because I'm hearing a lot of good things about live.
You'll be sold to see him live.
There's bands I've seen that I hated, and then I saw them live, and I was like, man, those guys fucking rip. Yeah. But and I mean like actual bands that I hated, not bands where I listened to their album was like not really mine, you know. Like but I don't know. I just like listening to the songs it didn't really feel honest to me. Felt like being weird for the sake of being weird, not like somebody that writes weird songs and they just happen to be dope songs. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just didn't quite feel honest to me. Like, once again, like, I'm sorry for saying that directly to you, but I'm not going to sit here and shake your hand and lie to you and be like, I fucking loved it. Best band I've ever heard.
I have no doubt whatsoever that if you see them play, it will eradicate that feeling at the very least.
For sure. And a lot of bands do that to me.
Yeah, you may. I'm not going to say that it's going to automatically sell you on. Okay, this is now my favorite band, or I want to listen to this all the time.
No, but I'll probably
any question about the any question about the authenticity of what they're doing, will be erased or answered. I think.
Jadd, do you know if they're from Austin originally?
At least 2 or 3 of the dudes are. I want to say that the singer, Danny, he might be from somewhere else. I don't know. It's nagging at me that I don't want to pin him to being from somewhere he's not. I have Oklahoma in the back of my mind. I don't know if he's from there or if I'm just remembering a show they played. I think maybe he moved.
That's also what I was going to say.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we're both remembering that because it's true. But I think at least half the band or more is from Austin.
I just asked because I was kind of the opposite of Brett because I lived in Austin for a long time. I heard like this is an Austin band. It kind of encapsulates the sound of this. Well, what the city used to be. And kind of a lot of the underground music coming out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I just for me, just like they don't need to be heavy for it to work. I guess like I keep referencing some of the same bands like a Godspeed You Black Emperor. I thought Nick Cave was a great touchstone. Like I said, Woven Hand or 16 Horsepower, the precursor to Woven Hand. I mean, these are the bands that I hear and other bands that I love. That to me, they're coming from that same sort of dark, gothic folk Americana cloth that. Yeah, I got a sweet spot for it, and I don't often have a lot of time to go searching for music outside the genres that I work in. So it was nice to have it sort of just thrown at me and end up being able to have it in my world because I probably wouldn't have had time to go find it otherwise.
Nice.
Yeah, and they're a band that like they can play with just about any genre. And I've been fortunate enough to be here in Austin to see them several times, but I've seen them play on death metal bills.
Right.
I've seen them play on straight up venues that play like country and Americana. So I think that's impressive to me that they can do all of that and still be themselves because they're still. You're mentioning all these bands that they remind you of, and I agree, but they are still incredibly unique. In that, and I've known the violinist or fiddle player for a long time. Back like in early 2000s, I had a band, and he had a different band, and we used to play together all the time. And to hear even how far he's come as a musician, and that band is extremely talented. It is kind of it's really impressive to see what he's done and who he's come about, and that idea that Blake says that it sounds very Austin. It is, because Austin likes it weird, and they are weird. And I can't tell you how many times I've been at their shows and people walk in like, is that guy playing a violin? What is this? And then 2 songs in, they're all in. They really dig it.
Why do you think that there aren't more heavy bands with violin though? Because I love it every single time that I hear it. And it seems like a lot of bands, especially heavy bands, metal bands, like to add keys and stuff like that in there. And I rarely feel like that's
I can answer that.
needed.
Yeah, I got an answer too.
Yeah,
But go ahead.
Right?
Put up an ad for a fiddle player for your Doom band and see how many responses you get.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add to that. It's pretty fucking hard to learn to play the violin to the degree that you need to be able to play it. I can think of at least 2 bands off the top of my head who wanted a keyboard player and actually got somebody who didn't play keyboards to be the keyboard player. That's how, not to shit on really good, talented keyboard players, but
Right. Yeah.
you can kind of stumble into a room and pick out a little bit of a melody on a keyboard if you have no idea what you're doing. I don't think anybody can pick up a violin and pass an audition if they don't know what the hell they're doing. So.
I think that heavy bands need more violin. That's all I'm saying, man. I think that it's good every single time that I hear it. I think it adds so much, and there's like this darkness to it. I love it.
Well,
yeah,
then let me recommend.
I love it too, but
Let me recommend the debut record from the Otolith that I'm putting out later this month. If you haven't already heard it.
Awesome. I did see on a video of the song Doghead, which is on this record. There was like a live performance of it, and the guitarist was using like a bow on the guitar. Is that something that they do frequently, or is it just that song? Or
I've seen him do that live.
Okay.
All the time. I mean, he usually plays that big hollow body guitar, and he gets that kind of great, almost cello sounds out of it, and it just adds to the texture and the darkness of what they do. At first it's like, it's not a flaunt. It's not like a look how talented we are. It's adding like to the music. It's really like, they're incredible musicians. It's really, really cool.
And they don't actually have a bass player, so they have drums, violin, guitar, and then the other guitarist is sort of guitar / weird sounds, and he's got like a little rack of stuff that he kind of messes with when they play live, and I think he's the one who brings out the bow sometimes and just does other random shit, and
Okay, so for this album,
unique
did anyone
sure.
have any favorite tracks on this album or least favorite tracks on this album?
I mean, I already said mine. The first song, Razio.
Yeah, no comment.
All right, this is a song.
I mean, that track for me actually is in my top 2. I think that one and Holly Berry are my top 2. Holly Berry, maybe out of the whole record, is maybe functions best as a standalone song. It's either that or Doghead, but Reziel it just creates a sensation right off the bat. Like, you don't, I just feel like it could be noon and 100 degrees outside, and you put that song on, and it suddenly feels like evening next to a lake, with like cool wind blowing and locusts in the trees. It's just fucking perfect.
Yeah, I did like Holly Berry a lot, and actually the title track Tohu Wa Bohu I thought was pretty good. It's got kind of that like dark swagger that I was talking about earlier. But I did feel like after that, the last 3, I felt like the album kind of fizzles out. I felt like those last 3 were maybe a little bit more like ballad-like or something, and it was just I thought it kind of fizzled out after those top like 5-6 songs.
More like soundtrack music, I guess, towards the end. But
yeah,
to me, like when I heard the record, Holly Berry was my favorite track right off the bat. I thought that was such a great song, got a good hook, really different. When I saw him live, the self-titled track is so big and so awesome live that, just like anybody, when we go see a band live that we're totally floored by it, anytime we hear the song on the record, now it takes us back to that time live. And that is to me, it's first, and it's a way out there, like, because my body was moving. I couldn't help but move to that song. And when they're doing like the hold it in, like everyone just singing it. I mean, it was just all the vocals sounded so big, and the way it just stopped was awesome. And to me, I think you're right. Maybe the last part of the album isn't as strong, but because for me, as soon as that last vocal line on that song happens, that's the peak of the record, in my opinion.
Yeah. What about their more recent albums? Jadd, you might maybe know this, or Ryan better than anyone. Have they evolved at all since this album? I know this came out in 2020. Have they changed their sound? Are they still working on different kind of stuff, or?
They did a split that was a little bit more of an experiment. So I don't know if you could gauge like their evolution, because I think they were trying to do something different, like on purpose, as opposed to just following where the band was going to go.
The Pale Horse, Pale Rider.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the first time I heard them.
I heard a lot of good things about that one, though. I heard a lot of people talk about it.
That's my favorite work by them, actually, is that record. And it's pretty much from what I can understand, it's a concept record. Like they were with Pale Horse, Pale Rider. It was like a concept record of okay, we're going to make it sound like the desert. And, you know, I mean, I could be wrong on some of that. I actually got that from talking to the Pale Horse, Pale Rider guys more than anything else.
That sounds right.
But that's in my opinion, their strongest work. And I've been a fan since their first record. I just think I do see some evolution in how they've played. And I think them doing concept records, in my opinion, is the way to go, because they would be able to capture whatever sound and ambiance they're trying to create.
Real quick, before we move forward, while we got our homie over here on, can you elaborate on the meaning of the title of the album?
Oh, shoot. He told me what it was. It is, I think it's Hebrew, but I don't remember what it means. They explained it to me when we were first talking about the record, but this was in 2019. And
I looked it up a little bit, and
thank God.
from what I could gather, it's like
I knew Ryan would do the homework.
Yeah. It's talking about like the genesis of Earth, like the condition of the Earth, and it roughly translates. It depends like which version you're reading or whatever. It kind of translates to without form and void, or unseen and unformed Earth, basically. And again, I thought it was kind of like oddly accurate for this album. I don't know if that's, you know, why they kind of went with that, but I was like, okay, it is very earthy. And even the album cover, you know, and all that kind of stuff, I started to kind of understand it, and I thought it was cool.
See, I wonder if
I've been calling it Chumbawamba for like 2 weeks.
We'll have to look up what Chumbawamba means, but
I remember
the genesis of the Earth.
I wonder if that formlessness is also important to keep in mind in terms of, for example, why, Brett, you might not have liked it as much, is because the songs don't have necessarily a traditional song structure, at least in terms of how I was listening to them. I could be wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, every time we do one of these, I just put on the album and let it roll a couple times.
Yeah. I just noticed that there was that title is kind of a little more prescient now, because the kind of deviance from traditional structures, I thought was one of the most interesting things about it, and what really caught me once I started to pick up on that.
Yeah. I did want to read what Eddie, who is normally on here, had to say about it. He couldn't make the podcast, but he did have a few thoughts on it. And this seemed more like an Eddie album, so it was a shame that he wasn't on here. I'm sure he liked it. It seems like he's into more of that atmospheric type stuff. So he said that I do like the album. It's something I'd probably only listen to in a certain mood. Definitely music that's outside the box and refreshing to hear if you're stuck in a rut, finding new music to explore. Reminds me of how diverse and abstract Puscifer gets, as it has kind of an anxiety-ridden structure that keeps you wondering what's going to happen next within the song phrases. Sometimes it just leaves you with an uncomfortable feeling, but that's a good thing because it keeps you on your toes and interested in what they will do. There's a well-placed, majestic listening parts to balance out the odd vibes. I do love the eerie atmosphere of this album, which I would agree with.
Pretty good review.
I agree with a lot of what he had to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wish he was here.
Yeah. Anything else about this album that anyone had? Either pro or con, either way?
I know we're not going to
No,
talk about the album art, but I loved it.
Yeah, I
I
don't mind
mean,
the album art.
I do have it. I could show it, but I
Pull it
felt
up.
like
Show the listeners.
Let me see if I can find it. But yeah, all their albums kind of seem to have kind of a similar theme. That's kind of like, again, kind of earthy, you know.
The band, I think
Earth.
Garrett from the band does their own. He does the artwork, I think, for everything. He also does a lot of their video work and so forth. So they're pretty multi-talented in terms of being able to convey, a particular aesthetic, both visually and sonically.
Yeah. Does anyone know where this photo was taken? Is it Texas?
I actually don't know. I remember it was one of
Doesn't look like Texas.
nine different shots they showed me when they were trying to choose their album cover. But
Once again, looks like the West Coast. Can you guys blame me?
I hear that, although I don't see that as a
know.
negative. When you were saying this record sounded like walking down the street of Portland, I'm like, what's wrong with that?
Oh, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying, like, I would have guessed that's where they were from.
I was intrigued by the record because I don't see their name on it.
Right.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
didn't know if that was just what I was seeing on Apple Music, but I don't even see the name or the album title on it, which is
I don't see it on
unique.
this one, and it's usually pretty small and not very like bold on their other albums either. But I don't see it at all on this one. So
See, I kind of like that. It's kind of like saying this album stands for itself. Listen to the album. Don't necessarily think about like what you know about Lord Buffalo or what you know about a single or something that you've heard from it. Take this as a one piece. Like to me, I thought of this album as something that honestly I kind of want on vinyl because it sounds like a vinyl experience as opposed to a more digital experience. Like getting that additional warmth, I feel like would contribute.
sure.
It does sound great on vinyl. It really does. And I like the album art for a lot of the reasons you said, Blake. I think sometimes as a musician myself and in a band, we try too hard to make it make sense. And something simplistic and easy like that leaves a lot to be explained, and that's kind of how sometimes it should be, right? Where we can kind of make up our own ideas as to what that album is, what it's about. But it's ironically, I think we all agree, looking at that album cover and listening to the record, it fits.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, even the album name, I thought that it all kind of fit together after listening to it at least 10 times. I don't know how many
After
times.
listening, translating.
Yeah. Anything else?
Well, you asked about their other stuff, so they've only released that other EP, and then they have, I believe, they have most of a new record in the can, either finished or very close to it. I haven't heard it yet, but I can't wait to hear it because when I became acquainted with them, they basically already had this done. So this record is now really 4-ish years old.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm certainly very
Wow.
anxious to see what they've done, how they've grown, what they've changed, what they've added on their newer stuff.
I'd like to hear it too.
Yeah.
Cool. Anything else? Shout out to Psychlona for recommending this one. It's definitely not one that I don't think that we would have brought up on our own to talk about. So shout out to Psychlona for recommending it.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion from
And a side note about Psychlona. Side note about them is I asked him about it. They had not really listened to the record until they played shows with him. Phil had seen him at the same show I saw him at Psycho Las Vegas, and he was really floored. But he's kind of like you, Ryan, where he's like, man, if it's not fuzzy, he doesn't really listen to it.
Yeah. And
then he went on tour. They did some shows with him, and once again, seeing them live, he was like, okay, these guys are badass, which is, I think, why and they just did it, which is why the suggestion was probably so fresh in his brain. And I think it's a great suggestion because shows that slightly fuzzed goes outside the realm of just fuzz.
Absolutely. And I mean, there's plenty of people that are going to listen to this that definitely listen to the desert type of folk and this kind of stuff. And this is definitely right there. I mean, it's definitely on the cusp of what we're always talking about. And that's what makes this podcast interesting to me and fun to me, is that listening to this stuff that we don't always agree on or always even really like, and just kind of diving deep into it and making yourself listen to it more than you normally would have. So I thought it was perfect for that. So it was a fun one to dive into for me.
Agreed.
Yeah. And Jadd, thank you for giving us some insight into how you came across them and what
No,
you
it's my pleasure to talk about it, and I appreciate you guys all giving it a chance, whether it grabbed you immediately or wasn't your thing, or if you liked it as much as I do. I'd always appreciate any opportunity to shine a light on these bands and the records that I was privileged to get to put out. So
yeah. So let's wrap up. Everyone want to talk about what they're up to and what they have coming up. Brett, you want to lead us off?
Yep. Littlefoot EP coming out November 11th. So look for that pre-order. Also, before I sign off and say goodbye to everybody, Jadd, Garney, I hope you guys appreciate me for my honesty and don't be mad at me for my honesty. And if the band watches this, it's nothing personal at all. I'm just not going to lie to you. I would tell my best friend if I didn't like his record.
Fair enough. Jadd?
Well, I'm working on a lot of stuff. For Blues Funeral, I have the first album from the Otolith coming out in October. Speaking of bands with violins in them, they have two. This is the band that essentially has 4 of the 5 members of Sub Rosa. So for everybody who was a Sub Rosa fan and was bummed when that band dissolved, this will give you something to be hopeful about and look forward to. I also run Magnetic Eye Records. We've got 2 records coming out this month. The new album from Ruby the Hatchet comes out in October, which was a big one. They haven't had an album since 2017. They just got back from a tour with Elder. They crushed. If you are interested in the idea of a band who's just channeling that sort of vintage heavy psych, I mean, they sound like, I don't know, the heaviest, most rocking versions of Fleetwood Mac or late 70s Heart that you can think of, except modern. Definitely want to check that out. And coming out before that is the new album from Costa Casanova. This is a DC band who, God, if I had this whole podcast to myself for an hour, I still wouldn't be able to probably do justice to them with a simple description. But they combine weird, sort of angular, quirky, proggy stuff with just straight ahead driving grooves. They are a bizarre band, and talk about a band that would probably be a head scratcher for you guys going, what the fuck are they doing? But then they just drop into this just churning, like head nodding groove. And you're like, wow, where the hell did that come from? 4 minutes into a song where I couldn't keep track of the time signatures of what they were doing. They're a killer band, and they're another band that I didn't totally get it until I saw them live. And then it was just an instant shift. So that comes out shortly. And then I also sing in the band Blue Heron, and we're just putting the finishing touches on a split release coming out next year with Ryan's band, High Desert Queen, on Ripple Music. So we just finished 3 new songs. They've got 3 new songs. We're getting the art together right now, and that should be out in time for High Desert Queen's European tour, if all goes well.
Which leads us to you.
Yeah, we're looking forward to that. I was worried you weren't going to say anything. I was worried Jadd wasn't going to say anything about how he's a killer frontman, because Blue Heron rips, and see those guys live is amazing too.
Thanks. You only spend too much time talking on the podcast about what I'm doing.
So we got a split coming out with Blue Heron, of course. That'll be our next release. We just announced on, I guess that was Friday, that we'll be playing Desert Fest London, which we're really excited about. That's going to be a killer lineup.
Congrats.
And that will start we're really, really excited about that. I mean, some of the bands are on that are phenomenal. And we will be announcing, there's some that I know that we can't announce yet, some other festivals throughout Europe that we'll be playing. And so we have a pretty extensive tour that we will be doing in 2023 through the UK and Denmark and Germany and all over. That's going to be awesome. And then, of course, I know I mentioned last time on here, what I'm super excited about also before all that is here another week and a half or so, we go on the road with Fatso Jetson for a quick run of tours, and more importantly, we play a generator party on someone's ranch, and that's going to be like a very moving moment for me because that's where it all started. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, very cool. Blake?
It's awesome. I don't have anything that cool. Mostly just been a little quiet on the socials lately. Been working on second album, wrapping that up right now. Probably gonna send that off for mixing and mastering within about 2-3 weeks. So big busy times over here.
Cool. Well, that concludes episode 5.
Awesome, man.
We'll hop on to the after hours. If everyone wants access to the after hours podcast, you need to subscribe and we'll send that out. But thanks everybody. Thanks for checking it out, and go check out Lord Buffalo's Tohu Wa Bohu and let us know what you think, I guess.
I concur. Check it out. And thank you guys again for having me.
Yeah, right on. See ya.